Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Saturday stream edition. I'm so glad that you guys are here. My name is Derek Clifford. I am the founder and CEO of Elevate Equity. And today we have a very special stream. First of all, it's our very first live stream. But secondly, we're going to be going over a deal that me and my team in Indianapolis had just completed. And it's going to be great. We're going to walk through everything. We're going to start at first why we picked up the property. And then we're going to go through an overview as to what the property is and the process that we went through, and quite a process it was. And then we're going to talk about lessons learned and then start to answer any questions that you guys may have. So we're excited to jump right into it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an overview of what it is that we did. Back in 2018, a couple of guys, we decided to go out to Indianapolis and just kind of tour the market. At the time, I had a couple of rentals already in place, and I was very happy with the way the single family was going, but I was always intrigued about the multifamily. So I had the intention of bringing out a few guys, and we went out to go look at the market and show them what I've built and try to inspire them to move into the Indianapolis market with me while I happened to be out there checking out my properties and looking to buy more. Well, when we ran into one of our wholesaler friends, we briefly mentioned that, we're interested in multifamily, and, if they had any properties, come up to let us know. And they happened to mention this while we were in their office, that there was a property that was just getting under contract, and it'll be released out to the public pretty soon. So they were looking to advertise this property. And we told them, wait a minute, let's take a look at it first. And then maybe you don't even need to advertise it. Perhaps, I'll just go out there and maybe we'll make an offer on it. Maybe we can make something work. And so what happened was we ended up going to the property, checking it out, and it ended up from there, we decided to jump on it. And there is a little bit of a story behind how that all happened. So what I would like to do is maybe I can back up a little bit and then give you a little bit more about the fundamentals and how the whole thing worked. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I want to just show some photos about what the property was and how we were moving through the process so that you can easily imagine what was going on in our head. And just to let you know how this all worked out great, because we purchased the property for $350,000 back in late 2018, I think October-ish. And by the time we finished, about a couple days ago, or actually last week, we were able to refinance the property at a total valuation of about $1.4 million. So although it took a lot of work and sweat equity, and we had to put a lot of money in to rehab the property, we were able to do a successful BRRRR, which is a buy, rent, refinance, repeat type of methodology, and with an apartment complex instead of with a single family house. So let's jump into the details. I'm going to start sharing my screen right now so you guys can see what it is that we're going to be looking at. All right. And there you go. So you should see something on the screen here. Let me see if I can make this full screen. I'm not sure. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Give me 1 second here, guys. Technical difficulties here. No, I think that's fine. We'll be all right here. All right. So how we turned $350,000 into a $1.4 million building in 18 months. So that's what the outside of the building looks like. That's what it was when we first purchased the building. And you can see there's a little bit of distress here, little signs of distress. It doesn't look like a building that's in the best shape, but it wasn't in a worse shape either. It seemed to be pretty reasonable. This is what the rear of the building looked like. And this is the alleyway going through the other side. This is us taking a look and walking the property down before we got it under contract. Obviously, we knew about the property. They gave us the address ahead of time. Here's another view of the side. You can also see that some of the windows are punched out, and we noticed that it doesn't look to be in the best shape here, but all of that means opportunity for us, right? So then we were able to sneak a peek on the inside. And this is the inside of some of the units. One of the neighbor next door actually turned out to be the handyman, and he had a good relationship with some of the tenants that were inside. So we're able to go inside and take a look at what some of the units looked like. And this is pretty much what we found. So It's as you could expect. Some of the units were being turned over, which means that there were people inside the units that were leaving. Some people were already inside, and some units were just abandoned and looked like a wreck. So kind of a mixed bag of units, but that's what comes in with the apartment building. Now, this is the most interesting unit here. You can see that there's a piece of plastic underneath the ceiling. That's because there was a whole bunch of roof leaks and the ceiling was caving in right underneath someone's bedroom. So again, not the best property, and definitely spells issues, but this was something that we were able to conquer. Here you can see quite a bit of damage right here on the side. You can see the plaster is dropping through. And again, this is clearly indicative of more roof damage, which we were able to see again before we were even in contract with the property, because we were a little bit smart and we were able to go out on site, try to find some people who were already engaged with the building and let us in to go take a look at it. Yeah, and then here you can see, I don't know if you can see, but the window here is kind of damaged in the top panes. And then this is this is one of the units downstairs, which was not residential, on the first floor. And of the 18 units, only 5 of them were downstairs. This one below had an office that the old owner used to work in, and this was what the office looked like. Kind of a waste of a commercial space, but that's what it was. And then there was also a little 475 efficiency unit. This one was literally, I think, 200 square feet. And there was someone living in that 200 square feet. There was like a bed, a little shower, and a sink. And it was like a very, very mini studio. And we found out that this tenant was actually paying like $100 a week or something silly like that to live in there. And then once we took a hard look at the property, right, we were given the purchase agreement from the wholesaler who gave it to us. So me and my 3 other partners, we sat down, we all got together after we took a look at the property and slept on it. And we said, okay, how much is this thing going to cost? Like, how much do we think, how much work is in here? Like, what do you think we need to do? Obviously, the roof needs to be addressed. We need to do interior turns. We'll need to probably replace appliances, and we'll need to be able to do this with no one in the building at all. So how much is our debt payments going to be? And so, we sat down for a couple hours and just tried to hammer out a high level plan of like how much all this was going to cost, how much the debt was going to cost, because we won't be receiving any income while that was happening. And in the meantime, we had this real estate purchase contract that was given to us, and we had a few days to fill this out. If we didn't fill this out and get under contract by submitting some earnest money, which is the very first sign of commitment to a broker, sending in about $5,000, which is what I think this is what was committed to here. If we didn't get that in place, then they would just go ahead and start advertising the property for to the open market, right? And that's something that we didn't want. So there was a lot of pressure for us to try to do a lot of our due diligence in a very compressed time frame. So obviously, we were able to move forward on it. The 3 of us kind of all came to a consensus on what it is that we could do, what our strengths were. And the thing that ended up turning out to be a lessons learned a little bit later on is that we didn't really know each other that well. I knew a couple of the other guys, but there was another person that I didn't know too well in this partnership. But we decided to go for it because we believed in ourselves, and all of us were very motivated. We really wanted to break into the multifamily market, and we saw this as a great opportunity to be able to do this. So this was the purchase agreement. And then next, we moved through a whole bunch of steps, and we ended up going to close. So I'm just showing you the closing documents here. And this is just, a formality. I blanked out a whole bunch of the pertinent information, but you can see here that the purchase price was $350,000. And taking away, the credit that we had and some other things like title fees and transfer fees, we had to come up with $260,000 in cash to bring, or $346,000 in cash to bring straight to escrow so that we could close. And so the 4 of us partners, we put together all of our cash and we made it happen. Now, next thing that happened was once we closed on the deal, we didn't have any cash to be able to do any of the renovations we needed to do, right? So the first thing that we did, and this was all part of that initial team meeting, was once we purchased the property for cash, now it was up to us to try to find a way to get cash to be able to do the rehab on the property. We figured that the rehab would be somewhere around $500,000. Turns out that was a lot low, but when we said, okay, we need that kind of money, we had to reach out to my contacts out there to see what bank would be interested in doing what's called a cash out refinance. So once we put the money in, then they'd be willing to write us the money out. We had an appraisal done. The bank always has an appraisal done whenever they do these closing statements or whatever they do these cash out refinances. And the appraisal amount ended up becoming, it was something like $600,000 or $700,000 is what the bank said that it was worth. But the bank that we were working with said, we will give you the greater of 70% of the appraised value or the purchase price, whichever is greater or whichever is less. I'm sorry. So what ends up happening is they said, okay, well, we'll give you 75% or 80% of what you purchased it for, or the appraisal, whichever is greater. It turns out, or whichever is less. It turns out that the purchase price was much less than the initial appraisal when we first bought the property. So they gave us a check for $300,000, and that gave us a little bit of a runway for us to start some of our work. And once we had our money, that's when the work starts, right? So what I wanted to do before we do that is I wanted to show you guys a video about how one of those properties looked like. Okay, and this was how we inherited the property. So I'm just going to show you this. So you can see we're walking through the units here. This is the bedroom. This is the one with the ceiling that collapsed, and you can see all kinds of roof damage everywhere. Like it's kind of a nightmare here. Everything is old. There's trash all over the place. And I remember that it smelled a certain way inside the apartment. So this was not one of the good looking ones, but this gives you kind of a sample of like what it is that we were facing once we went into the property. So you can see there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. And then I remember in the kitchen, the ceiling was falling through, literally. Yeah, there we go. You can kind of see that. So this is what we were looking at. We knew that everything there was cosmetic. So, but mainly we were just trying to focus on the roof first. And then, once we were able to get the roof issues taken care of, and we could then work on the drywall and some of the other things as well. So I wanted to show you guys that because that was one of the best parts of the walkthrough, was seeing the ceiling fall through in 3 places inside the unit. So, but let's back up now. We have our money. We've got money to be able to do work. We have to go out and get quotes and bids to try to make sure that we're getting the right price to do the roof work. And we ended up finding a company that could certify and do everything that we needed to do for about, I think, $70,000 to redo the roof on our building. So this is what it looked like at the top when they were doing the work. You can see all of the roofing the old roofing material being torn off. And what this is called is a flat rubber membrane roof. There are pitched roofs out there where pitched roofs have like kind of an angle to them so that when the snow and rain drops down on it, it kind of goes to the either side. But this one was a rubber membrane. So it was a flat roof that had like kind of a rubber layer separating the building from the outside world. And so whenever it would rain, the rubber would obviously not absorb any of the water. It would just kind of run off into the gutters. And so this is kind of the process of them taking that apart. Here was the area where the ceiling was falling through. Here, the wood was completely rotted out. So in order to redo the decking, they had to cut that and then start to lay new pieces of wood on top. And then here's them continuing the process of laying a new membrane on top. So lots of work. And then this is the finished product, what it looks like. So it's a nice white rubber membrane that kind of, any rain that comes down on top of it, it kind of beads off and rolls to the side. And then, yeah, there was a lower roof as well, too. So you can see that. Now, the next thing to do after the roof was to trash everything out. So there was a lot of tenant management that was taking place between the point where we were working on the roof and between the point where we had an empty building. And the reason we decided to go with an empty building was because we wanted to reset the entire tenant class inside the building. because if we had the same type of people that were willing to live in conditions that were like this, that's not the type of tenants that we want to have living in our properties, because they're not going to be paying us the rents, and then it's not going to be able to translate to a good valuation on our side when we're finished with the property. So we had to find a way to manage the tenants, get them out of the property, either by doing cash for keys, or just not renewing their leases, or just kicking them out, plain kicking them out. And I remember at one instance too, we actually had the police at our property because someone was held at gunpoint. We hired a contractor who just didn't seem he was a very rough contractor, and he asked a lot of the tenants to leave. We tasked with the task to please help us remove some of the tenants, and he kind of took it a little bit too far there. But in any case, we did get rid of all the tenants, but not to say that there was a few stressful moments there. And in addition, something else I forgot to mention, at this point, by the time we have the roof being worked on and we're getting the tenants burned through, it's very stressful on property managers because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And there's a lot of patience. And since there's 4 of us owners and 1 property manager, we all have our own ideas about how this is being done in the nitty gritty. And we went through 3 property managers. We went through the initial property manager that was one of my contacts, another property manager, which was one of my contacts. And then at that point, I didn't have any more property managers. So we had to start looking and tapping into my network of other investors to try to find help, to get referrals for another property manager to help speed this process along. And finally, we found someone. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on, how important it is to have good property management and boots on the ground. So after the roof was completed, the next step was to kick out all of the tenants, which was a process in itself, and get the property to a point where we can just work, we get a clean slate and we can work on everything. Well, part of getting that clean slate is trashing everything out. So this is literally pictures that we had inside of the property that we needed to trash out. And this is the trailers that we filled everything up. And I think we filled up like 30 times or something like that with these small truck trailers. We had like this caravan that was constantly trucking away trash and trash. So, some of these people that were living here and that got kicked out, they just didn't care to move some of their stuff out with them. They didn't either have the time or desire, or it's just not worth it. So you can see the type of stuff that we were dealing with here. But there was a lot of potential in this building because the building is in an area where appreciation is bound to happen. It's about a quarter mile away from downtown, and the area is starting to turn in that particular spot, and so this is just too much of an opportunity to turn up. So despite all of these pictures and all of this trash out that we had to do, we felt that it was definitely worth it. So there you can see some more trailers, and you can see all of the trash that we've been taking outside of the building. Lots of work. Yeah, and so just tons and tons of trash, a lot more than we thought. And they ripped everything out, the carpet, because the carpets were stained at some point. Just lots and lots of things to do. Now I wanted to show you guys a few more videos too. So let me go here to the playlist. Yeah, so once we started getting everything trashed out, so there you saw like how some of the units looked. We got them all clean. So all the carpet was ripped out, and it started to look a little bit like like an actual apartment building, just vacant. And so then we started to do some work inside the units on drywall, plumbing, electrical, and we started to do all that. So I wanted to show you guys what that started to look like inside the process. So here is one part of the building where we were focusing on, because we had 12 residential units and then the rest were commercial downstairs. And what we were trying to do is we were trying to do 4 units at a time. We wanted to finish 4 units first, and then once the units were complete, we could move on to the next, because we wanted to lease up to start getting some income into the building. If we tried to do everything all at once, it would take forever, and we wouldn't have, we'd have the whole building sitting vacant. So we focused our efforts to do one part of the building at one time, get it leased up, get some income coming in to help us pay some of the bills, and then work on the second and then the third set. So this was one of what the units look like, and I apologize that it looks kind of grainy here, but I think you get the picture. Just drywall, paint, electrical, windows, Basically, you name it, we were changing out. And this is the kitchen area in the in one of the smaller units to the south. Let me see if I can fast forward here. But I think you guys get the gist of it right here. All right, let's go to the next video. So the next video is what the other parts of the building were looking like as we were getting electrical prepped. Okay, let me slow down. Maybe that will help with the blur. There we go. So here you can see what's called track out. And what track out is the electricians need to find where the electrical wires are that are existing to be able to pull them out and then lay new ones in. So when you track out the building, you're ripping out parts of the drywall and parts of the wall, finding the electrical so you can see where it runs so that you can either rewire it or restructure, that part of the building. It turns out too that we were going to end up replacing the plumbing. We didn't want to, but that was something that we found that we actually needed to do because we started to get multiple leaks. Yeah, and here you can see kind of some of the neglect, before any of the units were worked on. Some of these units were vacant for a very long time, and so it just depends on what each unit, how each unit was. And then here's a stairwell as well. You can see that the trash out guys, they ripped everything out here too. And so there's nothing left except drywall work. So yeah, they put switches in. They worked in the roof because we were going to put recessed lighting in. And at the time, plumbing wasn't really on our radar, but it was something that we ended up needing to do, like I said, because of leaks. And so the track outs that we had right here actually ended up being useful. And in some places, we end up tearing down the entire sheets of drywall itself. So pretty interesting. I don't want to, take you through the whole video, but you can kind of see that there's a lot to take in and a lot of work that needs to be done on this section of the building that was waiting for the rehab crews and the electrical that we were doing for the entire building because we were sub-metering that. So we were doing all of the electrical at one time and then working on the interior rehabs at one at a time, 4 units at a time, so that when the electrical was done and the first set of units was all finished, that way we can get our first set of tenants in, and then we can go on to the other units and get them in as well. So hopefully that is useful to you guys. So let me stop that. Okay, so let's go back. I want to continue on our journey a little bit. So again, this is what we just saw. This is a little bit further down the line. This is when we're getting close to getting the units completed. So as you can see, things look really nice. The electrical is mostly in, so you have lighting inside the units. They're still working on some of it, and some of the rooms don't have the panels yet. But you can see here just construction, ongoing work. Very long process. Took about 3 months to do the 4 units because we had some personnel issues. We actually had to fire a few contractors because they were stealing from us, and they were overrunning and reporting work that they didn't do but said that they did. And yeah, just lots and lots of issues to work out there. So you can see a whole bunch of rehab pictures in progress. All right, and then the very last video that I want to show you guys is what the commercial unit looked like. That's the downstairs, because as we were working on the residential down to the commercial, we need to we'll work on that. And let me show you what that looks like. So we were kind of using the areas downstairs as like it was a catch-all for all of our materials. Like we just received materials here, and we had the trash out guys rip out everything in here. It used to be a laundromat, so all of this place, all of this area that was here was actually filled with washers and dryers. There you can see a drainage issue that we had to address a little bit earlier. There was like a drain line that was running through the roof there, and it started dripping through the insulation and through the walls. So we had to pick that up. But this whole area that's in the video right now, that was full of furnaces, like dryers, like gas-powered dryers. And so we had that all trashed out. And we were basically using this commercial area as a storage place. And then over here is where it connects with that old office that we showed you in pictures before. So there is actually a connection. It's kind of dark to see, but you can see that the two properties or the two doors connect together. All right. So once we finish with that, finally we started to get some progress, and we started to see something like finished units. And at this point, this is when things started to get a little bit easier, because the first 4 units we had leased up or rented, they were finished, and we had people inside there paying. And that was a really big win for the team, because that's something that we we really needed it. So once we got that morale boost, we got these units completed, and then everything was kind of history from there. So as you can see, the units look really, really nice. Our contractors did an awesome job, and it's just a complete 180 from what the pictures were before that we were just looking at a few minutes ago. So as you can see, lots of care, really nice coloring, and yeah, just the contractors did some really good work out here. So we still have some work to do on some of the windows, and there's still things outside that we need to work on, like some and the commercial units downstairs. Some of the exterior we need to do that, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can see here, yeah, these are all the completed units. This is what it looked like. And oh yeah, and then this right here, I wanted to show you too. This is what where the laundromat was. So it's hard to imagine, but over here, this is where I was showing you where we had all this stuff. It was kind of raw floor, and then the ceiling was kind of, pouring through down over here on the upper right-hand side of the picture. This is what the unit looks like right now in the downstairs, and it's going to become a bakery. So we have a tenant in there who is getting all of their equipment in, and hopefully should be able to start up here in late January. So that's pretty much it. And then taking us to the end of the story, this is the new appraisal. Okay, this is the appraisal that we got back. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see a little bit more. This is after we started working with the bank, right? We started to get all of our revenue up by getting all of the units leased, getting some tenants in the commercial spaces down in the bottom, right? So now we're starting to get some steam, and people are starting to actually pay us. That's when we were able to go to a bank and say, hey, now it's time. We need to pull some money out to repay back some of our debt. Because as we were going through the rehab process, we actually ran out of money. That $300,000 that we had from the bank was not nearly enough. We ended up more than doubling that. And we had to go to find private money from relationships or people that the 4 of us as owners knew, and we're willing to say, okay, we'll lend you money at 9% or something. And we drew up a simple promissory note, and then they gave us some money to be able to finish this project out. And once we went through this process of refinancing, we were able to pay back all of those private money lenders plus the original bank, and have some cash left over for us to pull out some of our original seed. So again, the property was purchased in October 2018 for $350K. And at the time of the purchase, the property was 100% vacant. And then it says that 12 of these spaces are 1 bedroom, 100% occupied, and then commercial units are each they total about 4,700 square feet, and the 2 units are leased. And so the new market value is 1.4. So that's pretty awesome. That means that of that 1.4, the property or the bank was willing to write us a check for 75% of what that appraised value is, and that ended up to be about somewhere around 1.1. And so that 1.1 covered a lot of our bills. We were able to pay off all of our private money, like I was mentioning before, and then that's kind of where we are right now at this point. So we are pretty happy with the way things have turned out. So that's a brief story about how the whole thing went, and I know it's a lot, but there was a lot of emphasis on how the team worked together over a long period of time. Being so far away from the property and being not able to go to the property anytime and check on how the contractors are doing really added an extra challenge, because we had to find someone that we could trust out there to tell us the truth or to act on our behalf. It turns out that our final property manager ended up being more or less that person, and then a contractor that we had found while we were trying to scramble to work all of the stuff through. But in the end, we were able to sub-meter all of the electric to the building's tenants. So that means that the tenants were paying the electricity and not the owner, which makes the building more desirable, because when you have the tenants paying the electricity, then that means that there's more operating income that comes into the owner. And as the operating income goes up, then so does the valuation of the building. That's part of the genius of how commercial real estate valuation works as opposed to residential. But in the end, the whole concept is the same. We bought a property for cash, we rehabbed it, we kicked all the tenants out, then we rented it out, then we refinanced it, and then we're looking to repeat that again with our original seed capital. So that is pretty much the entire process. That's how it worked. And so at this point, I wanted to share with you guys a few lessons learned as well from this whole thing, because it wasn't all, sunshine and rainbows. There was a lot of work. For the first year, I would say that we were probably texting daily with one another, and probably doing calls at the very beginning, maybe for at least 10 hours a week, I would assume, because this whole plan didn't just fall out of the air, right? Like we had to say, okay, how are we going to rehab the units? Should we keep tenants in there? Should we shuffle the tenants around and move them from unit to unit so that they're in one side of the building and then we work on the other side? Or should we just get rid of them completely because, we don't really want those types of tenants around when we're moving in nicer tenants within the nicer units? So there was a lot to think about, plus the whole property management situation, then the debt and everything, and the roofing and getting quotes. So there was a lot of work. And so I'm really glad that I didn't have a lot of this to do myself, because as a full-time employee, it's just a lot of work. It was almost too much. So I'm glad that I had the team to also offer different perspectives into how things should work. And again, that's when we started to leverage each other. And that's when it really started to take off, when we started working together as a cohesive unit and just setting out goals, identifying roles and responsibilities, and just making it happen. There was a lot of points in there where I wanted to quit personally. I was saying, man, we have so much debt on this property. We've gotten to a point right now where if we continue trying to do a rehab and this thing falls apart, or we're not able to get this going, we're going to have to write checks out of our personal checking account every single month to pay for the bills, or let it go into foreclosure, because there was so much to do. We didn't know what we were doing, and at least at the beginning. And so we had to kind of figure it out all on the fly. But I would say that this property is where I cut my teeth. And I think the three other guys who were in on this, if they were on the stream, they would say the same thing as well. It was a very humbling experience. So some lessons learned, I have 6 of them. The first one is I will never, ever do a deal again without having a boots on the ground owner. Without having someone there as an advocate who's going to be able to drive out to the property and take a picture and say, hey, why don't we do this instead? Or, keep pressure on the contractors to keep them straight. Because sometimes if they see that they're getting paid on time and they're getting paid no matter what they do, and there's no trained eyes to go in and look at the details, look in, like get an inch away from, the trim and from the paint and everything, then it's going to be work that has to be redone. And so they figure, well, what the heck? They're not going to do anything anyway. What are they going to do? Try to find me if I leave? And so then they end up leaving and bawling. So the other is we will be doing very thorough due diligence on the team before we start buying the property. The property itself, that's a given. Obviously, you got to do due diligence with the property, but doing due diligence on who's going to be in on the property with me, that is going to be very huge for me going forward. I have to make sure I understand their personalities. I trust them, and there's cohesiveness in personality types. That's going to be the biggest thing, because I'll be honest with you, a lot of the time that I spent in this property, I could have spent in obtaining other properties as well. But because of the personal relationships that were inside this property, that made it really tough for me to continue moving the business plan forward, we had to work that out on the fly. And that cost my time and energy that I could have spent in another deal. So next time, I'm going to be doing thorough due diligence on whoever I partner with. That's going to be a big thing. Next, trusting my own instinct. That's going to be a big factor going forward too. There were a lot of points in there where I wanted to suggest something to the team, but I didn't, because I felt it would be better for the harmony of the group if I kept my mouth shut. That ended up biting us in the butt a few times, and I'm not going to let that happen again. The fourth thing is rehabs. They never, ever go according to plan, because when we originally built this whole plan out, we thought that we'd be doing maybe 400 to 500,000, and that was it, right? Well, when everything was all said and done, we tallied it all up, and I think we were somewhere around $700,000 to $800,000 inside of this thing. Like, we spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money rehabbing it, and we made, I'd say, maybe $200,000 or $150,000 to $200,000 worth of mistakes, meaning people stole stuff from us, or inefficiencies, or just issues with the building that we should not have run into. So that's something that we really need to be able to focus on, is having a good rehab plan and making sure, again, that it feeds in with boots on the ground and having a contact and a team there in place already. The next is, we should have had a schedule. We should have built an overall schedule and a guideline, because as time rolls on, I know that we're all busy as team members, right? We all have stuff going on, but if we had a schedule and a plan from the beginning, we could put together everything about like how long this is going to take, and then we wouldn't have inefficiencies of one crew waiting for another to finish. That ended up being a huge problem in the sequencing of the work later on. And I can get into that in later detail if you guys want to, but just trust me, it was one of those key issues where having a schedule of all the work that needs to be done so that you can itemize what the cost is going to be and when it's going to happen and what is dependent on what, because we're not leasing a unit out until all the electrical is submetered and completed. So that's one thing. And then the final thing is that even though it seems like a great property, and most of you guys are on the stream or listening to the stream right now because I was able to turn, or our team was able to turn, basically $1 million in valuation for what seems like a little bit of time, maybe a year and a half. But I'll be honest, not worth all of the effort in one sense, because the years and the 18 months that we spent doing this was $1 million for me, split 4 ways with a couple other guys, right? So I got one of that. But how much money could I have made if I had actually had that time back and that energy back and that emotional power back, and was using that to direct to other projects? I don't know, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure that it would have been a little $250,000 that, or whatever our gain was on that particular gain, that $1 million split 1/4. So that's something that just wanted to pass out there to get you guys thinking about what you're going to do with the BRRRRs. In the end, though, if this property came up, right, and we had to do this whole thing all over again, I don't think that I would do it now, given what I know now. But that's why it was important to do, because now, like I said, I've cut my teeth, and I'm pretty much ready to go on this. So that being said, you guys, that's all that I have for you. I wanted to check in with the audience and see if there's any questions that you guys have, because this was quite a process. I learned a lot from it, and I know that you guys can too as well, especially through me and through the tribe and through the podcasts and all of the video that we're creating on YouTube and our website. So I welcome any questions that you have, and do have one question. The first one is, would we do this all over again? So yeah, I just went over that. If we had to do it all over again, I would have to make sure that I understood exactly who my team members were, why they wanted to do this, and then I understood who they were, and then also really give it some thought what my opportunity costs were, because if I knew that I'd be spending this much time and energy on it, I probably would not have done it. My plan from the beginning was to let our property manager that I already know out there kind of take the ball and run with it, and then we would fund it and then check in on their work every once in a while. But my team members had other ideas. They wanted to be more hands-on, and unfortunately, that cost us in the end. So that's what that was. Number 2, how did you keep track of everything going on? Yeah, good question. So in order to keep track of everything, we had a shared Google account, a shared Gmail account, and we had the shared Gmail account, and then we also had a Zoom meeting that we set up. We also had a text chain that we had going, and we were using Google Drive a lot. I'll have to admit that I was the one that was mostly keeping track of the records and documentation and keeping everything straight, so that if anyone had a question about what was done or what was agreed to, then we can pull up the document quick. But that does take time. I think that being organized, it doesn't matter what system you use, but just being organized and understanding that documentation itself is important. That's really good. So I do recommend that as well. And then I saw another question coming in as well. It was, how did we find the private capital? Yeah, that's a key. So finding private capital was really tough. When we started to run out of money, we were freaking out a little bit because we knew that there was no way that we'd be able to finish the work that we needed to do with the money that we had, because you can kind of see where your burn is heading, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be running short. We're not gonna have enough cash. And so what we did was we said, all right, let's tap into some of our personal relationships and see if anyone would be willing to do it. And in order to do that, we really had to believe in the property itself, because the property itself, it was not a golden property from the beginning. So we really had to, instead of showcase the property, we really had to show our own personal experience. And that took a lot of getting to go. So me and a couple of the other guys just leveraged our relationships with some of the other folks that we knew that were also interested in learning about real estate, and also wanted to know more about how it works, and just also had trust in us. And so that was pretty much how we were able to keep that going. So, all right. So with that being said, you guys, I don't see any more questions, but those were awesome. So thank you guys for asking them. So with that, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. This was really fun, and I'm glad I got to share all of this with you, because I don't know, it's great to share all of this great knowledge and some of the experiences that we went through, which were painful, so that you don't have to. But if you want to learn more about how to BRRRR an apartment complex, please just reach out to me. You can send me an email at derek@elevateequity.org, or you can go onto our website and just contact us there. I'd be more than happy to set up a time with you so that we can talk through things. But if you don't want to do that, there's plenty of other ways. You can listen to our podcast. You can go on to YouTube. You can look at the blogs on our website. Everything is available for you, and we just want to help you. So we're there for you 100% of the time and 24/7. So that being said, thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you later. We will do another stream next Saturday at the same time, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And shortly in the week, I will be releasing an invite and also the topic. And we'll talk through some interesting stuff for you guys who are just getting started or want to learn more. In the meantime, you guys have an awesome holiday week. I hope you guys had a great Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, and you're getting ready to have a fantastic New Year's. So until then, have a fantastic one, and we'll see you in 2021.